Welcome to Distance Learning Strategies for Educators. Media educators across the country, faced with the enormous challenge of teaching filmmaking via distance learning, are currently redesigning their curriculum and rethinking the production process for their students. With this challenge in mind, we're here today to share ideas and materials, to exchange tips and resources, and also to share problems and brainstorm solutions. I'm your MC, Matt Lawrence, a filmmaker and film teacher, and the proud teacher of two of NFFTY's three co-founders, Jesse Harris and Kyle Seago. And our presenter today is Karen Bennett. She has a degree in film scoring from Berklee College of Music and worked as a music editor for John Williams, Danny Elfman, Tim Burton, James Cameron, and Steven Spielberg before returning to school to become an educator. Since 2011, she's been teaching filmmaking to middle and secondary school students. Her students have won awards all over the world for their films, including the 48-hour film off at NFFTY last year, and Karen has won awards for her teaching. Karen has field tested the curricula she'll be sharing today, so it's been through a round of refinement. Still, she's expressed some regret that having spent years refining her filmmaking curricula, she's been asked to share something that she doesn't usually use. So if you'd like to learn about the curricula Karen teaches under normal circumstances, check out her book, Teaching the Art of Filmmaking, available from Amazon. So please give a warm welcome to Karen Bennett.
So we're going to be talking about distance learning strategies for filmmaking. In the spring of last year, when all of us had to all of a sudden go online, it was absolute chaos at my school. And I'm sure, no doubt, it was at your school as well. One of the big problems with distance learning is that in a school, usually there's only one film teacher. And so we feel very much like we are, on an island all by ourselves trying to figure things out. And so my goal here is to give you a little bit of an overview of what I've been doing to try to float my curriculum throughout this new sort of dust up in our teaching workflow. So today what we're going to be doing is checking out best free resources that can be helpful during distance and hybrid learning, screenwriting and pre-production curricula, production during a pandemic, how to handle it, film project ideas for high schoolers. I've got a couple of projects that seem to be working very well right now, and editing with Adobe team projects. Just so you have a little bit of an understanding of where I am right now, I am at a private school in San Juan Capistrano. We do have small class sizes, but previous to this, I was working at a very large middle school in Los Angeles with performing arts students. And so I do have a pretty broad range of understanding where students would be right now. One of my classes, middle school, Intro to Film, has 20 students. We have 18 kids in person, face-to-face, with 2 students Zooming from online during class. Our classes at our school are 75 minutes each, 3 days a week. Middle school, all the students must have an iPad with them, but they have no access to laptops or desktop computers, and my middle school classes cannot be held in the same classroom as my high school classes because they're trying to keep the upper school and middle school separate for social distancing. And so right now, my poor middle schoolers are in a math classroom with social distancing and an iPad, and that's all they have for filmmaking. I have my MacBook Pro for Zooming during class, and it has been a really fun, said sarcastically, experiment. The high school is where I teach most of my classes. And so my high school film production classes have between 10 and 12 students per class. Most of the kids are in person with a few online students attending by Zoom. And again, same as middle school, 75 minutes, 3 days a week for class. all of our high school students have to have a laptop for school, and the MacBook Pros are the most popular, but we do have some students working on Microsoft Surfaces, and several of them are working on computers that have very low amounts of RAM. And so trying to make sure that they can go through the entire production process with a MacBook Air that has 8 gigs of RAM is something that I'm working on very difficult, very tenuously with the students right now. Before we begin, I want to just draw your attention to production safety guidelines. Please go over this with your students. The link is going to be in the Google Drive PDF file, so you don't have to be writing furiously with all of these links. What I want to talk to you about in regards to this is that right now our students are trying to sort out what is appropriate for production. And what does that mean? Well, we all know that students want to be on set and they want to produce the best possible movies that they can. And for teenagers, a lot of times it means that their mantra is, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. And that is a very big problem because right now with the pandemic, that is not okay. And so we have a picture here of Jonah and Zenzele. They're 2 of my former students who just started USC, and you can see that they are on set. You can see that they are wearing masks. This is a project that they were working on just a month ago. Please remember that it's not just about how far your crew is from each other, if they're social distancing and if they're wearing masks, but it's also about the product that they're going to put out. So we talked to our nurses at our schools and said, okay, well, if we are making a movie, what are your concerns about being on set with each other during this pandemic? And the nurse brought up something very interesting. She said, well, if you have a scene where you have 2 people on camera and they're not wearing a mask, you're telling the audience that for us, for our school and our film department, that it's okay to be on screen with each other not wearing a mask. And that undermines our social distancing and health guidelines. And then I said, well, the kids brought up, what if we did split screen and we filmed, one person on the left and then had, them stop and then film the person on the right. And then we split screen them in. And she said, it's not going to make a difference in the mind of somebody who's watching the film, and it's still going to send the wrong message. And I found that to be a very insightful aspect of our conversation. And it's true. If we show a film to our kids and we have, use visual effects to get them on camera together, the kids who are watching it are probably not going to notice that. And they're probably going to have this idea that somehow it's okay to be together without masks on. And so I just wanted to throw that out there to you. So the apps that we're going to be using for this workshop are the ones that I've noticed in my online teacher groups that are common. They're relatively cheap. Most school districts have a site license for them. And I will be showing you how I've been using them with my students. So EdPuzzle is a great way to ensure that students are watching videos and you can embed questions. Kahoot is great for kind of fun quiz style games. Padlet is wonderful for posting. It's sort of like an online bulletin board. G Suite, which is now I think Google Workspace, I think they just renamed it, but that's where all of your Google Forms and all of your Google products live. Our school uses Adobe Creative Cloud, and we actually do have a site license so that the students can have their own sign-in, which has been really, really great during this pandemic. And then Caltex for screenwriting and Screencastify for me to do screen recording work with the kids so that they have example videos. All right. Links are going to be made available at the end of the workshop, so please don't feel like you need to furiously scribble any of this down. My first thought when all of us went on Zoom and we all went home in March was, what am I going to do if I get sick? In a normal year, usually I don't have a sub that has any background in film. And this year, more than any other year, I'm not going to be guaranteed that I have anybody who's going to be able to take my place and be able to speak about filmmaking. So how can I create subplans that are going to be workable for somebody who can just walk into my strange little, virtual setup and run a class that's going to be, worthy of our curriculum? So subplans. Daily warm-ups. The one thing that I've noticed when we've gone back face-to-face is at the beginning of every class, there are issues. There are always going to be issues. Some kids' iPad's not going to work. Somebody's run out of battery and they can't find their charger. Their headphones don't work or whatever. I'm troubleshooting every single day, and it's really great for students to have a routine. So a daily warm-up where they know where to find a warm-up that can take the first 10 minutes of class is very, very helpful to me. Emergency lesson plans, again, when technology fails. Let's say in the middle of the class, something happens. The kids need to know that, boom, I've got something ready for them to go and occupy them so that I can address whatever's going on. Independent work. Students, we all have, those students who want to work at a very, very fast pace. But right now, especially in filmmaking, when you want to have a class that does produce films, you're going to have a whole wide variety of ability levels, and you want to challenge those at the top, as well as those who are just new or maybe not even convinced that they can be a filmmaker. So how do you address independent work? So here is the way that I'm handling my subplan right now. I have a list of links on a PDF file that I have given to my department chair. And most of them, I have to be honest, are all Studio Binder blogs. Studio Binder has done an incredible job over the last 6 months in creating these brilliant resources. And so if you go to Studio Binder, you'll find blogs for directing, producing, script writing, and post-production, and all kinds of stuff. What you find in each one is one aspect of filmmaking. For example, types of camera movements in film. In this one blog, and they have hundreds of them, it contains a written explanation of what camera movement means. It contains a 30-minute curated video with beautiful examples, really high quality, 12 other videos covering each specific camera move independently, how to storyboard camera moves, and then script to screen showing how to write camera movement into your screenplay. It's super comprehensive. I estimated that about each one of these Studio Binder blogs would take about 2.5 hours for my class to completely cover. And that means that if I get sick, if I get COVID, or I have a family member I have to take care of, I don't have to worry about the kids having on-task work to do in a very simple form. Independent student work. I have several students who absolutely love visual effects. And so we love Video Copilot. Most people do. It's right now, I think it has like 169 VFX tutorials. Andrew Kramer is my favorite soothing voice on the internet. So here's what I did for my independent students last spring. When the country ran out of toilet paper, I took a note of tutorial number 159 and did this. Okay, so that's me in my apartment with nothing available to me to use. So that was like a coat hanger attached to like my lightsaber toilet paper roll. And the point was that you can do fun things even without any trips outside. So you can actually hear my slippers slapping on the floor because I didn't wear shoes for 6 months. My student Chloe decided that she thought Harry Potter was more amazing than Star Wars and hit me back with her own video using the same tutorial. point of that is to say that it's always the best way to teach visual effects if you can do it in a fun way that feels like playing. And so that was not required, but Chloe was bored and she and her sister and her mom were just at home. And it was a fun way for her to learn. Okay, I love EdPuzzle. And this is a wonderful way to use it. We found Hollywood screenwriter attempts to write a scene in 7 minutes, and that's on YouTube Vanity Fair. You can find it very easily. And of course, I threw that into an EdPuzzle and used it to spark class discussion questions. And the great thing about EdPuzzle is that I can leave a link up, and if the kids' Wi-Fi at home isn't working well, they can leave Zoom, work on an EdPuzzle, and I can actually see their responses. EdPuzzle, for those of you that haven't used it yet, is amazing because it forces them to watch the entire video. It won't let them skip forward. And you can pause the video at certain places and add your own questions. And so all of that works very, very well for a time when we just need them to watch a video and answer some questions, and then it keeps all of your students' responses in a grade book so that you can take a look at their responses in your own time. EdPuzzle is also great for script to screen. We were talking about screenplay formatting at the very beginning of the year, and so I took a script to screen bit from Zootopia and stopped it occasionally during the video to ask multiple choice questions. Super, super simple. All right, we love screenplay formatting. We love Crash Course. For those of you that are teaching middle school and even high school, these are about 10-minute long videos that cover, there's one series that covers film production and one that does film history. And they're super school appropriate, really appropriate. I use it with my middle schoolers as a warm-up in the beginning of every class and to launch a discussion about some aspect of filmmaking. And of course, if you have EdPuzzle, they know about it there too. And Crash Course is available right in EdPuzzle. Pixar in a Box has sort of an interesting way of delivering content through Khan Academy Labs. Their goal really was to showcase STEM learning and computer coding, but there are aspects of Pixar in a Box that lend themselves very, very well to just general broad filmmaking. And I absolutely love their Pixar in a Box for the storytelling, story structure, character development, and their introduction to storytelling is brilliant. Students, if you go to pixarinabox.com, there's a free interactive assignment sort of category. And the kids can do like practice with like the squash and stretch aspects of animation and the walk cycle and things like that, and learn a little bit more about animation in a more hands-on way. I did this with my middle schoolers last spring, and they actually really enjoyed it. It's very comprehensive. So now we're going to talk a little bit about screenwriting and pre-production. We're using Caltex this year because the site licenses are affordable and it has specific features just for educators. We have used Final Draft in years past because that is industry standard, and I always try to get my students to use industry standard software. But Caltex's educational aspect of their website is amazing. So it's all web-based and it's all in one screenwriting and production hub. And my school site license for 1 year is $3,000 for unlimited seats. The customer service is quick and responsive. They're up in Nova Scotia. And because of that, it just was a no-brainer for us. Here's a little bit about what that looks like. When you pop in, they've got 4 different types of projects that you can create: film and TV, which we use most of all. But our theater department is also having the students write stage plays using their stage play formatting, which is really great. Multi-column AV is really great for music videos and documentaries and things like that. And then game and VR, we actually do have a VR class, and so they're starting to learn how to use it for that purpose. If you haven't used Caltex before, it's super simple and it's really, really similar to every other screenwriting software out on the market. just so that you can kind of see what it looks like from my perspective as the teacher, you can see that I've got project folders arranged by class. And so I've got A block and C block and D block, and these are all specific projects that the kids are working on. You can see that I can invite collaborators to each project and see who is collaborating and how long they're working together on this and in what capacity. Every single screenplay is shared with the teacher admin, so I can dig into their screenplays and just see exactly how much they've been doing work on it. I can manage the members and student accounts, which is awesome. I deleted the last names, obviously, here, but this is what my portal looks like, and I can add students. Again, I have unlimited seats. It's great. If a student has issues, I can change their password, because let's be honest, right now, student passwords are a pain in the neck. Kids forget, or it's an uppercase and not a lowercase, and I didn't remember that I added a number or whatever. I can go in and change their password and say, hey, your password is now this. If you want to go in and change it again, have at it, but I have the ability to do that for them. And I can always step into their user account to help them troubleshoot, which is great. They have quick access to all the pre-production tools, and I can quickly look at those tools and give them a grade. And that's super helpful for me. Best of all, I can watch them type in real time, kind of like a Google Doc, only kind of more awesome. And so I can see if they're all in my classroom wearing their masks and I can't because of social distancing, I can't get close enough to see what they're doing on their computers. I can just see exactly how much they've been working and when they're working. I can write comments. This is my favorite part of it. I can write comments, and then when they make the required changes, Caltex sends me an email notification, and then I can just really quickly pop back in there and give them an updated grade. That is lovely. Okay. If there are any other screenwriting programs out there that beat this or are cheaper, please, we're going to have a forum so that you can put that forward. I'm always looking for better and cheaper. And so this is what I'm using now, but I'm happy to move forward and find something new should it come up. Production in my class. Students are filming on their own smartphones during the pandemic. Why? We do have DSLR cameras that I usually check out to the students, but because the equipment is delicate and breakable, and because I can't get close enough to them to really help them figure out what's going on with their settings. And our school has some really strict policies about sharing class materials. I just decided, forget it. All of us need to learn how to use the smartphone camera to the best of our ability anyway. And so that's where I went personally. What are we focusing on in production? We're focusing on directing our actors. I've engaged our theater teacher to help with some more engaging acting lessons in our class, and it's going amazing. We're doing blocking, framing, and lighting, as you should. And as sometimes in student films we notice, these are the aspects of student filmmaking that get left behind because we are so concerned about our really expensive camera or our camera equipment and learning how to use it. Sometimes on set, high school filmmakers and college filmmakers will forget about all the attention that needs to be put on your actors, blocking, framing, and lighting. So this is our opportunity to really flesh out that aspect of their production. If they give you the stink eye and say, yes, but I need to be shooting on the C100 or whatever they're used to shooting on in your class, you can always show them these awesome short films made by a Hollywood director. Snow Brawl is a lot of fun. That's an action film. And Vertical Cinema was shot by Damien Chazelle. We love those. And they have wonderful behind the scenes videos also on YouTube, and you can show them exactly how they manage such beautiful productions using an iPhone. What I've noticed in their production on their smartphones is that a lot of them want to have more control over the camera in their the camera settings on their iPhones, and so several of them have bought Filmic Pro because it lets them have that extra level of control over image. It's $15 on the App Store, and I didn't want to make it mandatory because I hate asking students to buy things for my class. But it does solve the horrible variable frame rate issues with their iPhones. So we went about doing the competition for the All-American High School Film Festival. And because not all phones can film at 24 frames per second, I said, okay, we're all going to film this at 30 frames per second. It's going to be great. And so I taught them how to change the frame rate on their phones to 30 frames per second. And this is what that looks like. Phones have this strange variable frame rate that doesn't make it all consistently the same exact frame rate. So if that is something that bothers you hugely, Filmic Pro will help. If not, this Premiere Pro handled this footage just fine. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about Padlet. Padlet is a lot of fun, and most schools have a site license. So here's a couple of ideas for activities you can do with the kids. In the beginning of the year, I always go over camera angles. It doesn't matter what level the students are in. It's nice to have that reminder of the vocabulary. And so I go over what all of the camera angles are, definitions, and framing. And then I had students do a scavenger hunt. They searched for examples of specific camera angles and posted them on Padlet. And then I had like a little conversation like, what does cinematic mean to you? And so, because the word cinematic is so vague and so often used in filmmaking. And so what does that mean to you? And so they had to post an example of a camera angle and then explain why that shot appeared cinematic to them. It was a story starter kind of. You could turn it into bingo very easily with bingo cards with the names of camera angles all over them, and then they tick off a box as each camera angle is posted. That's kind of a stupid fun game. If you're having a bad day, and you will have bad days where kids are angry and sad and frustrated because of the pandemic or whatever, we had a ball. I had the students post the funniest school appropriate GIFs on a Padlet, and classmates had to identify the camera angles and movements from each GIF in the comments. It was hilarious. I loved it. I'm gonna try to do that over and over again just because it was so much fun. We are reading through Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, and he's got his 10 movie genres. And so another activity we did was that I posted popular movies to a Padlet over the last, say, 10, 20 years that students I thought had seen or should be familiar with. And then I had the kids label the genres in the comments, and then they had to justify their label of that film. And it was more fun than it sounds. That was actually a lot of fun, that class. All right. Using Kahoot. I kind of despise Kahoot because of the music, but the kids love it. And so we did another activity for camera angles. I've done Frozen Moment in Time with the kids for the last 10 years. It's super helpful to them to learn how to set up and sort of block a scene. So what they do is students are given a list of basic camera angles, and they set up a scene at home, totally pandemic appropriate, with at least 2 people. Then they take still photographs showing coverage of the scene with proper framing and blocking. So if it's a scene around a dinner table and like some kid is like, doesn't want to eat their carrots or whatever, you've got little sister in her pose Frozen and mom like this maybe because she wants her to eat her carrots, and they freeze, and then the student walks around and takes still photographs correctly framed and blocked. And of course you can add lighting in depending on how advanced your students are. And then the student takes those pictures and labels them with the camera angles and sends them to me on the Google Drive. In past years, my students get really, really competitive with it. And I would print them out and put them up on the classroom wall under the camera angle. So here's an example of a wide shot. And then here are the pictures taken by my students of a wide shot. And that way the little middle schoolers, the younger students who come in, have this wall of reference in the classroom, which is lots of fun. And then it's like a big thing for the older kids to have their camera angles photograph up on the wall. To make the wall is huge for them. They got really involved in that. That was really huge for them. The other thing you can do is take those pictures and toss them into a Kahoot. and simply ask the question, what term best describes this camera angle? Is it, a two shot? Is it, whatever? And then kids love to battle it out on Kahoot, and it's just a lot of fun. All right. Camera angles for EdPuzzle. I used one of my favorite videos from NFFTY, King of Time by Jaron Clegg, and created a simple camera angle question themed NFFTY EdPuzzle. And so simply the video stops and then the multiple choice question pops up. What camera angle best describes this shot? This is also a really simple way for a summative assessment. I'm not sure if your administrators demand summative assessments in your gradebook. If they do, this is a really simple way to get them. And of course, with multiple choice questions in EdPuzzle, it automatically grades it. And so you don't have to go back and hand grade anything. And that makes your life easier. And that's what we need right now. Please create a resource library. My resource library has made my life a lot easier this year. I've done it on my class website. All of us have some sort of class website. Maybe it's Schoology, maybe it's a Google Classroom. We use something called Blackboard, which is, I've never heard of anybody else using it. It's fine. It is what it is. And we've got these topics, and each topic, you can click on it and you can add all of your resource inside that topic. So I've got topics for the current silent film project, the Showdown, we'll talk about that, screenwriting, screenplay formatting, cinematography, et cetera. Honestly, it was a lot of work, and I really wish I had done it on a public website for me to keep for later, because a lot of these school websites are difficult to translate your work into the next semester or the next year, or if you move schools, sometimes you lose everything. So note to self, put it on a public website for later. Guest speakers are really, really helpful. In the spring, we wanted to make sure that the students had access to people who could tell them a little bit more about the industry. Jobs in the film industry is one of those aspects of our curriculum that always needs to be covered. And to be honest, during a pandemic, a lot of filmmakers are not doing a whole lot. They're at home just like we are, a little bit bored. You can just look at Team Deacons. Roger Deakins is interviewing all of his friends on that great podcast. And so I reached out to some friends to see if they would come in and speak to us. And one of the things that I noticed is that, number one, I didn't want them to do it during class time, because then that would exclude students who did not have my class at that time. And I didn't want to have the guest speaker have to show up for multiple classes. And so I decided that Friday nights would be really great to do this. Since everybody had to be home social distancing anyway, that would be really helpful. So we called up Tony, our friend Tony Revolori, who played Zero in Grand Budapest Hotel. And he got on Zoom with us and just spoke to our students about his work with Wes Anderson, and he had some great Bill Murray stories, and that was a lot of fun. We had my student Sydney Park come back and talk about her work on the movie Spork. This was June 5th, and this was during the looting and the rioting. And I had several students reach out to me and say, Miss Bennett, I am panicking over what I'm seeing on the news. Can we just watch a funny movie? And I called up Sydney because I knew Sydney wasn't working. And she is my favorite student. I love her. And I said, Sydney, would you please help us find a really funny movie and come in and talk to us about it? And she had been in Spork in 2010. And so we all watched it and had a good time talking with Sydney. We had my student Skyler, who is a stunt actor, and he worked on Get Out and Us, and we had him come in and talk about his work as a stunt actor. We had Cameron Covell. You might have seen his name in some nifty films. He worked at Rocket Jump before it kind of slid under a little bit, and he's wonderful. And he came in and talked about his puzzle mystery, Death by Potato. He was a lot of fun. We got Nikki Caro, the director of Mulan, to come in and talk to us about Whale Rider. This was last spring before Mulan had come out. And so that was wonderful. Her daughter was in my film class, and so that was wonderful. We had Rebecca Thomas come in and talk to our students about how she funded her senior thesis film, Electric Children, that went on to win a lot of awards. And that was another excellent conversation to be had. Most of you are probably not familiar with Rebecca Thomas, but her information to my students about how to get funding when you are an unknown filmmaker was incredibly impressive. And then we got Dave Chappelle, and I just about lost my mind. A friend of a friend knows him and said, please, can you come in and talk to Karen Bennett? And I just about lost my mind. He talked to the students about how to leverage your own failure to create your own success, and also how to use your work to further social justice issues. And it was absolutely unbelievable. He was so kind and he was so receptive to all of our questions. We're going to talk a little bit about distance learning projects right now. And so for high school, we had a little bit of a collaboration this year for me with our drama teacher. So I get to co-teach with the drama teacher, and we figured that this year we were really tired of trying to come up with ideas for movies that take place in your house. And social distancing and social isolation is a reality, but we wanted to allow students to tell stories that didn't take place in your house. And so we thought radio drama would be a good place to go. And here's how we started producing that. So the first thing we did was figure out what the students would be doing as far as stories go. And I happen to have this book sitting on my bookshelf back there. It's the Alvin Schwartz Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark that I've loved since 3rd grade. And the stories are all super, super short, and the kids love them. And so we had the kids pick a story in teams. They would pick one of the stories. They would learn the history of radio drama, and from the earliest radio dramas all the way through podcast radio dramas that we're seeing now. This was the very beginning of this year, and we had several students in the class that had never seen screenplay formatting before. So this was their introduction to Caltex and screenplay formatting. And then they had character and performance study with our drama teacher, how to do vocal performances for recordings. And then, of course, voice and Foley recording techniques with me. So, of course, we have our awesome example. I actually had a lot of fun. Me and the drama teacher did an example, and we chose to do the toe. And if anybody knows Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, it's a pretty goofy one. And so Dan and I did a lot of remote practice with our collaboration. So this was sort of our dry run for all of how we were going to have the kids work together on Zoom. So after we wrote our screenplay and all of us kept our notes, then we decided who would play which parts for the vocal performances. And I'm going to be totally honest, we recorded them on the voice memo app on our smartphone. Why? Number one, it's actually fairly comprehensive. It's a good, simple recording app, and the quality is pretty good. I used to work as a music editor. I'm pretty leery of consumer level products. This is pretty good. And that way I didn't have to worry about kids, having to deal with microphones and buying or sending them to lend the kids during the project. This was great. The kids then edited in Adobe Premiere Team Project. And then I used Screencastify to create a step-by-step video for the students showing them how to create sound design and editing in Premiere. And so you'll see on the left side is the timeline that I created with our drama teacher. Each of us took a different scene. So scene 1 was me, scene two was him, scene 3 was me because I'm faster at working, and then the final edit was all mashed together. And I'm going to tell you how we did that more specifically at the very end of this workshop. So if you're interested in team editing in team projects, we'll get there, I promise. Screencastify was really helpful to me. I simply started a screen recording and recorded myself talking through creating the edit for scene 3. And then when I was done, I figured out the timings for where I talked about different aspects of sound design editing, and put them in the description at the bottom. So students can come back and they can click on a timing and figure out, oh, how do I organize my tracks? And then they can click on that and it'll jump right to that part in the video. That's been really helpful for students as they go about their own edit. Here we go. So the last part of it is after the students were all done with it, we're doing a live YouTube performance so that we can have Audience Choice Award voting at the end. And then right after that, the projects will all be up on my website, bennettcinematicarts.com/radio hour. I actually put them live on the website right now in case people want to maybe jump over and hear the examples of what the kids came up with. And so if you go to bennettcinematicarts.com/radio hour, you can click on the different titles and hear what those sound like. Another project that I always do with the kids is a showdown. I love showdowns. Number one, they're fun. And number two, they force you to use just about every camera angle that you could need to teach your students in the beginning of the year. And so we always do a project called the Showdown Challenge, where the kids are competing. They're creating a showdown and then they're competing against other showdowns for the best showdown. It's the Showdown. And so our challenge is a showdown with a twist. It cannot be a scene involving cowboys, weapons, or Western outlaws. So they have to get really creative. And we all know that a showdown is simply a standoff. So what could two people be standing off over? It's always super short. It's a 1 to 2 page scene. So it's very short, easy for teaching all of the aspects of production or pre-production through post-production in a very simple, short project. So they're going to film the screenplay in Caltex, filmed on a smartphone, edited in Adobe Premiere, and then projects compete against each other. Now, in this case, the students did not work in teams. They worked individually on this, and their production was at home with their families. First and foremost, we had to do research and writing. So I showed them scenes from traditional showdown movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, of course. And then a little bit more modern, something from The Quick and the Dead that showcased like whip zooms and whip pans, Sam Raimi, 1995. And then we started showcasing like, what are some non-traditional uses of the showdown? And so that awesome Raiders of the Lost Ark scene where he just, instead of a sword, he takes out a gun and ends the showdown. And then we've got this like updated showdown from The Matrix where he meets Agent Smith. And you actually see, instead of a tumbleweed rolling across, it is a newspaper rolling across the screen. It's an obvious reference to Showdown. We even have a showdown in Election by Alexander Payne, where they catch the teacher cheating on the student election. And that's really great with the camera angles. And then we have a comedy showdown from The Burbs, where they're daring each other to go up and ring the doorbell on the house. And it is absolutely a showdown and one of my favorite movies ever to watch. And then, of course, the most anticipated showdown, which was Harry Potter versus Voldemort at the end of the entire series. Our winning showdown, I'm going to show you the showdown. This is a student who had never made a movie before. She had never picked up a camera, and this is her showdown. She won. So here we go.
On the count of 3, first the remote gets it from the night.
Deal.
3, 2, 1.
So what do I do after we have a winner? The winning film gets a laurel to add to their film thumbnail. I post the film on our school social media pages. All films are eligible for our school film festival and submission to outside film festivals, of course. And if you need a time saver, you can always create simple laurels in Film Freeway. There's a little create a laurel function on that site that's really easy to use. Here's where I want to talk to you a little bit about how to facilitate editing with Adobe Team Projects. One of the things that I was really desperate to manage for this year was making sure that students could work collaboratively from home with a team. And of course, we know that people in Hollywood have been doing this for a long, long time, but to create a workflow that was accessible to students and would work within the confines of what we had access to with our school projects, that was a little bit of a huge leap for me. Like I said, I tested the water out with the radio drama project and a few other film projects. Here's what you should know. First and foremost, if you want to try this with your students, please, please, please make sure that you go and you find the editing collaboration from home with Jason Levine and Carl Soule from Adobe. You have to watch the whole thing. This is a little bit more complicated than a normal editing procedure. And you really want to make sure that you are very familiar with all aspects of how to troubleshoot before you give it to your students. Because if we know anything, it's that high school students will find a way to mess things up technically. All right. So the first thing we have to do is make sure that our assets in our place where all students can access them, and they can be accessed by Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects if that's the team project you're going to be using. So you need something called Google Drive file stream, which most of us use, but in case you haven't used it, make sure that all of your students download the Google Drive file stream app free from Google. So here's how I had to do it. Because students who have their own computers think that they know computers better than they actually do, I wound up having to onboard my students one-on-one via Zoom after school. And it took, for some students who had computers that were set up a little wonky, it could take up to an hour per student to do this. If the kids were pretty good and their computers were pretty well set up, it could take as little as a half an hour, but this is time consuming. So the first thing they have to do is install the Drive file stream, and it's free from Google. Why do they do that? Because all of the video files have to be in Google, in the shared folder in Google, and have to be accessed through the Finder, because that's how Premiere looks for files in their workflow. Step B is I create the project folders as the teacher inside my Drive and shared folders with each member of the team. So I made sure that the folders were shared with the team members. And then each team members has to click on the shared folder and create a shortcut to my Drive. Why? Because Google Drive doesn't Premiere can't find files inside the shared with me part of the file structure. And so to create a shortcut, you move it to My Drive, and that will be findable by Premiere. I'm sorry if I'm not explaining this well. I tried to put some explanation pictures. Okay. All team members add videos, music, sound effects, and other assets to their team's Google Drive folder. And you can see in here, I've got different folders for different aspects of what the radio drama required. ADR, ambience, music, scene slugs, I'll talk about that in a minute, and sound effects. I broke up sound effects and ambience because there were so many sound effects that they were starting to wind up having trouble finding the ambient sounds for each scene. Okay. Organizing assets is not a natural skill that students have in high school. And it is a huge part of what we do in the film industry. And so trying to get students to understand that when they download a sound effect, they have to take it from their downloads folder and put it in the required folder file system is actually harder than you would think. Even with students who are incredibly intelligent filmmakers, this is something that they have to just learn early. Sometimes they have to learn it the hard way. Okay. In Premiere, I had to set up their projects. So step one, inside the homepage, you can go to New Team Project, and I would launch that. I would name the project with the class and then usually the title of the project, and then I invite collaborators, which are the student editors. And so if you have a site license for the Creative Cloud, then you can add their email addresses that are associated with that site license, and it will invite them to that project. I'll show you that in a second. The project file lives in the Adobe Cloud, not on your physical drive. Please understand that there is no project file on the kids' computers. It's all in the Adobe Cloud. If your Wi-Fi is slow, the student's Wi-Fi is slow, or the Adobe Team Project server goes down, which it did a couple weeks ago, you will not be able to access your team projects. So understand that all of this is going to rest on the hope that all of this is going to work with our Wi-Fi and servers. You import files the usual way. So I do that, teacher setup. I import all the files from the Google Drive file stream. And then notice that if the Google Drive is slow or the students eject it, Premiere will not be able to find the video files and they will appear offline in the edit. So be careful about that. Now we're going to have the students' end of it. The students are going to launch Premiere, they open Team Project, and they see the invites, and they will accept the invite to the project. The next step is they have to find the missing media because their computers don't know how to find the file structure that was created when I created the project. So now you have to go into Edit Team Project Media Management, direct Premiere to find the media for the project. It's located, of course, in their Google Drive, My Drive team folder. Because we created that shortcut, it's really easy for Premiere to find it. Please refer at this point to the Adobe instruction handout for detailed information about media management and team projects. It's a little complicated and you do need to watch that entire video all the way through for all the details about every aspect of this. Make sure that each student is editing in a separate sequence. So scene 1 is one student, scene 2 is a different student, and they should not be editing in the same sequences at the same time. This will cause a conflict. At the entire end of the project, when everybody is done with their sequences, one editor is going to combine all of the sequence into one edit for the final mix and export. Sharing changes. When students open up the team project, they always have to go to Edit Team Project, Get Latest Changes. That will give them the changes made by their teammates on the project and make sure that they have the most recent updated project file. When students are finished working on the edit, they need to go to Edit Team Project, Share My Changes, and push out their changes to the rest of the team. Really, really important. So while the students are editing, you'll notice that there are like these little pencils next to each tab, each sequence tab in the timeline. If it's yellow, it means that we've been working on it and you need to push changes out. If it's red, it means that there's a conflict, that two people were working at the same time in the edit, and you can resolve that conflict. But make sure that you go back and watch that Adobe video. They'll go into great detail as to what that means and how to resolve it. And then if it's a gray pencil, everything's fine. No changes have been made and no action is needed. Okay. Here we've got a little bit of a pro tip. I was so smart, and I'm still patting myself on the back for this. It's a radio edit, and there's no video. And so I created scene slugs at 1920 by 1080 that literally just said scene 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through, and then final edit and what to do in the final edit, so that when we created the sequences, they were created to be the correct aspect ratio, because we were going to put them up on Vimeo, and I wanted to make sure that the project files were the right size. All projects and lessons are taking way more time than usual. So please make sure that when you are planning a project, that you give it 33% more time than you think you're going to need. Plan ahead to have easily accessible activities ready to go in case of a technical snafu or other issue. You don't want to have kids sitting there and causing trouble because they don't have anything to do when you're working with another student on a problem. Try not to give outright quizzes and tests. Kids are having trouble right now, and that can be a real big problem for them. Keep your sense of humor during class. If you keep your sense of humor, you win. It doesn't matter what the project looks like, just keep your sense of humor with the kids. The kids are having a hard time right now too. You are going to see some really strange behavior issues, eye rolling, complaining, and things like that. Refer back to the previous bullet point. Keep your sense of humor. You can contact me through Bennett Cinematic Arts. There's a contact form there. The PDF with resource links for this workshop can be found at the link in the chat, and I think Matt is putting that in there right now.
You got it.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. There's a film educators collaborative space that's in the works, and when that goes up, we will definitely send out information on how to find that. It'll probably be in relation to NFFTY social media. And so, Matt, I think we're just about done, and I know that we have work to do.
Yeah, we do. We've just got another minute. Karen, this was just awesome. There is one question. Is it possible to share some of your EdPuzzle videos so people can see examples?
I can work on that. If you want to put in the chat something that people want to see, I can make it public and see if I can find a way to link to that.
Awesome. So look forward. Anyone that would like to be part of the Teachers Exchange through NFFTY, please put your email address into the chat. We'll make sure everyone hears about that when that rolls out, and that should be quite soon. And Karen will be tied into that too, so she might be able to answer any of your questions at that point. Big thanks to Karen for sharing her expertise and creativity with us. And thanks to all of you for your time.